welcome to Show Studio. We're going to be rounding up the Haute Couture Spring-Summer 14 shows. I have an absolutely amazing set of panellists with me to help me out, and I also have a wonderful live model, Nicole from Tess Management, who's going to be sporting some actual couture for us to have a look at during the discussion. But before we begin, I'll let my wonderful set of panellists introduce themselves, starting with you, Amanda.
Hello, I'm Amanda Harlech.
I'm Tim Blanks.
And I'm Alex Fiore.
I love you all, just like no introduction needed. So before we go to Versace and see Nicole looking absolutely wonderful in it, I just want to ask a very sort of quick and simple question, which was, what were the highlights of this season's couture? Because it was such an interesting season. There was so much change in the air, so many new sort of HR appointments. What stood out? Alex, I'll go to you first because you're always very open with these things.
I think for me the two important houses are always Chanel and Dior, because I don't want to say there's a rivalry between them, but I think Chanel or Dior have said if the other ones stopped doing couture, they would stop doing it. It's this idea that they're really the two bastions of couture, they're the two biggest houses. And I would argue definitely this season they were the two houses that did it best. And really what they did this season for me was show a new way of thinking about couture and a new way of thinking about these incredibly precious clothes, but thinking about them in a way that wasn't so precious, where that wasn't... They felt really dynamic, they felt really modern, it felt really kind of contemporary, it felt really... People have questioned the future of couture since the 60s. And this felt like it was actually showing, for maybe the first time in a long time, a new way of looking at couture and a future for it, which I just found really, really exciting. It was a real privilege to be able to go to Paris and to see that.
Did you feel that as well, Amanda? Kind of a breath of fresh air this season?
Well, I suppose it's different for me because I'm actually at Chanel, so I see that whole process evolve, and that was coming from a very new point. Carl was really excited in breaking the ground movement-wise, so that the whole idea of running in couture was really a starting point for him, hence the sneakers, but also the shapes, and also creating a lightness and iridescence that was from sort of for day to night, but absolutely smashed any kind of red carpet parade, which I think is where couture slightly got cul-de-saced. And it isn't about that. It's about an extraordinarily lifted, I would say refined, because it makes you feel very refined when you wear it, way of life, but for life. For not for a sort of showbox.
Sure. Tim, what struck your fancy?
Well, the same. I'm with these two. I thought it will be a very memorable season, I think, in the long term, because of what happened at Chanel and Dior. I think that Raf Simons has, in a way, I'd say thrown down a gauntlet. It's a bit violent because he's not that kind of a guy, but...
A delicate gauntlet.
Yes, laid a glove. Kid glove. He is... I think it's extraordinary the way he's brought his own preoccupations into a legacy as enormous and rich as Dior's, so that you could see echoes of what he did in his own show, which he also moved the goalposts with this season, the show he did with the artist Sterling Ruby. You could see the same kind of obsessions being worked through into an haute couture collection. And it's just unprecedented. And for him to succeed as well, not just, make a proposal that may or may not work, but actually it worked. I thought was pretty thrilling, and actually it definitely was for his men's show and for couture was the absolute high point of the season.
No, definitely.
It was really exciting to see like a resolution of a thought process, of a vision made in cloth, made real. That's what was so potent this season. There wasn't that distance of it being something just remote and decorative. It was really about a dynamic, and that takes us forward into the ready-to-wear, and it's a very exciting point.
I think it's interesting you talk about the menswear, because I think the last menswear I went to was was the spring menswear. I didn't go to the winter one, and that was when he showed in the Gagosian Gallery out near Orly. Is it near Orly or Charles de Gaulle? I've no idea.
Orly.
Out near Orly Airport, and I actually wrote about the fact that it felt like there was an ideological difference, a geographical and an ideological difference between what he did at his house and what he does at Dior. And I feel like this time they were speaking the same language. And also after the last Dior Ready to Wear, when he did that finale that was all silver looks, kind of, you know, the looks that he'd done at Dior cast in silver. And at that point, that felt like it was him being like, okay, this is what I've done, we're moving on to something new. And it really felt like, you know, I got that inkling then, and then to see it happen, obviously I'm incredibly satisfied, because I was like, this is what I wanted, you know.
I think you were going to say, obviously I'm incredibly
He's a prophet.
I was just hoping we were going to go somewhere new, and it was going to, he'd kind of proved that he had a handle on the Dior legacy, and then it's like, so now this is my legacy. This is what I think Dior should be.
It's his voice.
But so quickly. Yeah. He's done that in 18 months. I'm amazed at, really. Do you also find that with Dior, what happened at Dior and Chanel, that it kind of changed the way you looked at everything else that you saw? It inclined you in a more generous way towards some of the other things that you'd seen, or made you see something like Margiela in a more elevated light and appreciate Margiela, which has always deserved an enormous amount of an appreciation and is getting more and more now, because it seems to be so in keeping with what you're seeing at
I think it made you look, because of what was happened at Chanel and Dior, it made me look at the intention behind all the other collections, which I hadn't kind of asked that question before. I just reacted to the clothes. And this was exciting.
I think it also made you perhaps search for a similar lightness or a similar feeling of you know, for instance, when I looked at Valentino, the stuff that I was focusing on was that incredibly stripped back day wear, was the lightness,
so pure.
And the fact they did a collection about opera, and there was the operatic stuff, but the more interesting stuff was the quieter pieces, the monastic pieces. But
the stitching wasn't that quiet. There was an austerity in line, but there was intricacy, and the music of the actual, like the tiny little bit of smocking or pin-tucking here was just beautifully engineered.
And so light. I mean, ridiculous. You just don't know. You get all sort of poetic and feel like it's, you know, fairy wings knitted into a fabric or something.
So it's the sensuous,
like, there's nothing to it.
Touch and colour and line and movement.
I want to interrupt us with a collection that we haven't talked about, but it's one that's I chose it to start with because I thought it is quite early, and I thought this is going to wake us up. So we can talk about Versace.
And it was the first show.
And it was the first show, so it's a nice one to start with because it always kind of kicks you into couture because it's right after the men's Saint Laurent show. So let's talk a little bit about the Versace show, and to help us, if wonderful Nicole can come and join me, we actually have a look from the Versace couture show, incredibly modelled. So Alex, you can leap up and touch it if you want. I'll give you permission. Let's talk a bit about this show. What did we think of it? Amanda, you're getting right stuck in.
I'm just looking very closely at the stitching. For me, it was a very, most of it was a very beautiful evocation of what Donatella does, Versace does very well, which is this kind of rhythms around the body. It was about, but then there was an introduction of a hood and a fluidity, which I think was a new departure there.
Now, how influential do you think Lady Gaga was on the
Very, with the hoods.
I mean, I talked with her about it, and she said it was interesting because I went and looked at the clothes first, like
before the show?
Backstage, and then I went to talk to Donatella because I love Donatella so much. It is an intense and passionate love, and I said, oh, it's great, it's very fierce, and she was like, oh no, it's about fragility. It's about the fragility of the Versace woman and the fragility in me, and I think her saying that did make me look at it in a different way. And then also I think there was a lot of, again talking about Dior and Chanel, there was such fragility to what they did, but at the same time it wasn't a fragility that was actually going to fall to pieces. It was the fragility and the lightness to it, and I think it's that idea that it's a fragility that actually isn't fragile, which is a weird thing to think about. Chiffon that actually isn't fragile. It's agile. Agile.
It's agile, not just fragile. I mean, I think,
But I think that's what this is very much about. It's that, you know, it's streamlined, really.
Yes, and we had the
beauty.
the jumpsuits and the little tiny onesie with the hood and things.
Yeah.
So there was actually there was a sporty, dynamic agility to this collection too.
And I think it was funny seeing Gaga and Donatella sitting, you know, at the dinner afterwards, because
Donatella doppelganger.
Beautiful.
yeah, but I wonder if Donatella had adapted her hair a little bit to go with, you know, it seemed quite symbiotic. It didn't seem like Gaga copying Donatella. It did seem like the two of them were kind of
Kindred
having a
spirits.
little bit of a
Well, like the
mind
ad.
melt there. The what?
The ad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, there's...
And it was Gaga who wore the old Versace, you know, which kicked off a huge regenerative process for the house as well. So
it was a nice way for us to start couture then. We enjoyed Versace. Thank you so much.
I mean, there was...
Oh, do you want to
there was, no,
say
there was
something
one
about
question. I was just
Sorry.
seeing these, like the arms.
Yeah.
But do you remember the black? They were like, it looked almost
It
like...
was sequin like tattoos.
Yeah, it was like, but there was almost like a drum beat to it too.
Well, it was interesting because when I talked, I mean, she was saying it was about fragility, and then I was like,
That
oh,
was
and
strong.
And there's the hoods, and she was like, oh, it's based on Grace Jones.
Yes,
And I'm like, so it's the
yes.
fragility in Grace, which I think it's also quite interesting to think about the way different designers interpret a word.
Like fragile,
Like fragile.
or agile.
Interesting.
And, you know, Donatella's interpretation of fragile is very different to most people's.
And
I
so
think.
it should be, everybody's interpretation should be different. It would be a very
what do you
dull
think her
world.
interpretation is?
Grace Jones is Donatella's kind of
Oh.
fragile. It's like,
So
but
I do
I think as well
fragile.
it's and that's kind of the great thing at couture. In this couture, I think there were so many incredibly idiosyncratic collections that were so much about the individual designers. You know,
Isn't that always the case, though?
at couture?
Yeah.
I think so.
Isn't that what
yeah.
couture is?
Yeah,
I
because they
think
don't
maybe-
have to do trend.
But I think maybe this
Yeah,
time, because there were
exactly.
new names there, you know, because I loved what Marco Zanini did at Schiaparelli, because I think that was so, it was so Schiaparelli and also so him. And that was, and again, Raf at Dior was so Raf, but so him. And Carl at Chanel,
Was
Carl
very
is
him.
Chanel now,
Yeah.
isn't it? It's kind of, they're one and the same. But I think maybe because there were those different names on the schedule, because there was Marco at Schiaparelli and because there was Hussein at Vionnet, it felt a bit more like, well, you were seeing more of it. And more interesting names as well, I think. It was livelier.
And also, I think one thing that's interesting when you mention that fragility is, you know, strong women get a lot of space in fashion. They get mentioned a lot, but a fragile woman isn't someone that's picked up on it a lot.
A woman
So
sometimes just wants to be fragile, as I was once told by a very clever lady.
Yeah, they want to be perceived as being fragile.
Want to be allowed to be
yes,
fragile,
yes,
I think you said.
But, you know, that's always the thing is it's the velvet and the iron. It's like you're not so fragile that you can be scrumpled up.
Yeah.
But also, aren't we all fragile? Don't we all want our spaces
I would
respected,
say that
actually?
it's not just women. I would
Yeah.
say everybody likes the moment where they can, you know, crumple into tears. Wants to have that moment, doesn't always get it. But
Thank you, Nicole. Does it feel nice to wear? Oh, good. Lovely. So
Great.
while Nicole nips off and gets changed, let's talk about a collection that we have all mentioned as a bit of a highlight. But we don't have a Dior look, sadly, but if we could go and look at the Dior collection, that would be fantastic. Because we've all said that this was kind of a game changer. We've spoken about how striking it was. I know it's difficult to sort of see too well. But talk to me a little bit more about why we were so moved and impressed by this. Tim, tell me about being there and seeing it in the flesh.
well, it was like being inside a sort of white plaster womb. And so it was funny to find out afterwards that actually kind of was the intention to create
The
this entire
insideness,
feminine and
yeah.
you know, female environment. Now, Raf's been talking about closed societies, you know, the closed society of women for a long time. At Jill Sander, when he did the Beautician collection and so on, he's fascinated. And that's, again, referencing his own work, the idea of, you know, Manic Street Preacher fans or New Beat fans in Belgium, the clubs he used to go to, these self-referential worlds. So this was clothes made for women by women. This is what he's thinking of, the Les Petits Mains, the seamstresses. And it was quite, I thought it was actually afterwards, reflecting about it, it was quite an audacious
It was very erotic.
Yeah, it was very erotic, and that translated into the clothing. These clothes that winked open, and that were like petals.
They were like hearts, but they were like
that kind of showed you everything and showed you nothing.
And inside and inside and inside, almost like you were being dressed,
eviscerated.
Because you shot it this weekend, you and Nick were doing a beautiful shoot. So tell me, when you went to see the collection, you were picking the pieces.
I didn't obviously see the show because it's the day before
Chanel.
Chanel, which is when Chanel does its accessorization on one of the 2 days. But I went after the shows had finished. I had my appointment at the House of Dior, and I was very, very lucky that Joanne Furniss was there, who gave me the most extraordinary. Travelled me through the clothes. It was very hard to make the choice of just one thing. I would love to have had 10 things to shoot, and in the end I chose one that had shape, so I couldn't go into the tiny detail. But I thought the workmanship was mesmerising, but it's that balance between workmanship and overall idea and its physicality that it was just so beautifully balanced. And it was, for me, clothes are about desire. You want to be that woman, you want to be there, you want to wear them, and that just hit that point for me.
It's interesting because, as we were saying, there's never a compromise on idea, even though there is that kind of immediate lust. It's still there's still as much kind of going on, there's as much that you can consider afterwards. You know, there's that immediate impact, but then there's also that kind of...
It's gone on and on, and I love the idea that, you know, maybe you pulled something on, but it was slightly too big for you, but then the inside bit, actually, so that you had the gap between the two, that negative space became a positive, and that was true at Chanel too, where actually the jacket sat away from the little corseted, and the skirts again sat away from the low belt. There's an interesting idea of dressing, of the process of dressing for couture, what it means to be a woman, to be dressed, to be fitted.
And the feel of the clothes making you aware of various bits of your body and making other people aware of various bits of your body. It is, when you said erotic, I thought Dior was very, I thought it was a very erotic collection.
Were you turned on, Alex?
I mean, the thing that I actually found very interesting about this was it started to come out, and the space... I tend to go into a show and I'm quite cynical, and I went into the show and immediately I was like, oh, it's Polly Magoo, it's 60s. It's very much like the show that they do in Polly Magoo, that kind of arching, I can't remember what the fake designer was called, but that's immediately what it reminded me of. And then the clothes started to come out and they felt quite 60s, and I was sat there thinking, oh, you know, would couture clients really wear this? It all looks a bit modern. And then about halfway through I was just like, they're absolutely going to wear this. This is totally, and it was kind of great to have. I love it when you go into a show and it starts, you have one idea and then it can totally twist you around and prove false all these stupid assumptions that you have that, oh, I know exactly where this is going, I know exactly what this is going to do. And halfway through to be like, oh no, this is amazing, this is absolutely, of course they're going to want to wear this. It's so light, it's so free, it's, you know, the air is going through these clothes.
Exactly.
The aeration, I think, talking about trainers, I was just like, everything's like a Nike Air Max. Everything allows the air to flow through it. Everything moves, everything breathes. It will work in any climate, which I just thought, and after last season's couture, the global couture, to think this is actually a genuinely global collection.
This is genuine,
This is something that will work in any, you know, in the climate of wealth across the world, no matter where you live. You can wear these clothes and you'll look modern and you'll look sexy.
And you'll feel modern and feel sexy.
And I think also there's something amazing about the idea of couture being these, I think when you go to couture, it's incredibly special because it's clothes that are made by people for other people. And so much of fashion has that stripped away, this idea that clothes are physically fitted to somebody. There's a kind of tenderness to couture, I think. There's this, there is a certain amount of love, and whether it's people pouring their love into the clothes rather than loving the person they're making them for, I think there's this kind of human contact that's removed from so many things. And it's amazing that you can take all of that old-fashioned tenderness and all these wonderful techniques and make something that looks so incredibly contemporary.
But do you think it's women making clothes for women?
Exactly,
which makes it even more even more special in a way. It's
there are men in the ateliers as well.
Oh yes, but I think in just the notion of it being women making, because it takes it right back to dressmaking and
Secrecy.
Louis XIV.
And beyond, what it's always been in a way.
I mean, Madame Cécile, who's one of the premiers at Chanel, said to me not so long ago, she said the difference between ready-to-wear and couture for her is that she said for the couture, every stitch is stitched with love. Because love for the master who is taking them on this journey into the unknown with dimensions that they cannot understand or comprehend initially.
Thank you.
And I thought that, and you can feel that. You can feel that there is this difference that's embedded right in the stitching, where the fabric actually moves with your body, and has an elasticity and a life. That's
well, I think there is that idea that it's not just something that's been jammed through a machine. It's. I remember watching that wonderful Chanel documentary where it's kind of about them trying to sew pané velvet and how you have to nibble at the velvet with your fingers to get it to lay flat, and literally to move the velvet pile so it sits together perfectly, and then to sew it. I think the sort of consideration that goes into couture, it can't be paralleled in ready-to-wear, although a lot of consideration goes into that. I think the idea that it's one person's intense work, or two people, or
three
five people. Exactly.
And the embroiderer is another level
for
as
days
well.
and days and days.
Days and days and days.
It's just that.
One pinprick blood could ruin a whole dress. That's the other. They have a whole kind of. There's the whole. They have all the.
Have you ever seen that happen?
No, but they have. It's a sort of superstitious thing for if you prick different fingers or your thumb, what it will mean. That's going to mean heartbreak and things like that. So obviously there's a whole mystique there, which would be wonderful to explore.
Amazing.
But no, I haven't known that happened.
Taking it towards your work, let's go to Chanel, just because you look absolutely gorgeous. I'm really jealous. I want to be wearing that.
It's so beautiful.
Talk to me about this collection, Amanda, because you have a very special relationship at Chanel.
Well, Carl always has his ideas for his collections months and months and months before even he starts sketching. So probably 6 months ago, he had the idea of creating kind of like a futuristic club. It's sort of like the refined of the refined of the refined, but he also wanted a dynamism. The two things that he said was this silvery mirrored staircase leading to the skies with girls running in sneakers. That was where it started. Then there's the idea of light and light reflected. Here you have it with these tiny little, these little filaments in amongst the feathers by Le Marier, but often there's a whole section where the new embroidered tulle is lined with underpinnings which are completely embroidered with fine sequins, so the light hits it, so actually it looks like you're splintering into light. It's like you're lifted into another state of being, which I thought was really interesting, plus speed. Nike again, actually.
And were you guys very impressed being there?
Because it's always when you walked in and saw the plain white obelisk, whatever, not obelisk, but that you just saw. Well, obviously it's going to turn around, but you do not know what's going to be on the other side.
And then Sebastian Tellier with its plangent music, and it was very emotional.
Yeah, right away it was.
From his heart.
First model running down. Well, it's curious. He's often said that things come from his dreams, and it's like automatic. It's like automatic designing. He kind of wakes up in the middle of the night, goes, and there's a collection. And this did feel to me like. Some of them are more dreamlike than others, and this one. It's funny. There was a very, very dark one a little while ago that was super apocalyptic, and that was quite dreamy in its own funny way, nightmarish, but. This really felt like a dream. It really felt, and also there's the excitement at Chanel of the sense of somebody doing something because they can. It's wonderful to feel that kind of momentum of nothing is impossible. Whereas you see other people who are struggling, oh, I want to do this, and it's like, oh, didn't quite get there.
I mean, he challenges for weeks of the initial fittings with the premieres to get the new proportions, and this doesn't show what half the show was about the tiny attenuated waist. He wanted to create two volumes here separated by this extraordinary waist, almost like dragonflies. So you had this kind of iridescence, and for me, I mean, I think it was extraordinary what they did.
Are you around when clients come in and start customizing looks from the show for themselves?
No, I don't get to see that, but it's really private.
I would
it's
love
with
to
the
see that.
that's with that's
I would
with
really
the,
love to see that bit where people come in and say, well, I really love this, but I'd like it without the waist or something. You know?
But I think the waist's very easy. You just don't have to have it cinched in so much. You can. The point is that it is a waist. But Carl always wants to challenge one's idea of volume or the shape of a woman and how she moves. He's fascinated by that.
There they are.
Yeah,
The Macero sneaker.
So good.
So each one was
Incredible.
different.
A revolution in couture right there.
I love the laces as well, the little tubes. It's just
Little
incredible.
tube.
They are 3,000 euros though, aren't
Have you checked?
they? That would,
Aren't
that,
they?
that's
I
their
don't
price
think,
tag.
or I think
They
I
probably
read
have
that
them
they're
your
not being
size.
sold separately to a show.
Oh no,
Like it's a look.
It's a look.
Oh, is it?
If you
Yeah.
buy the outfit, you have to get the shoes
You have to
with
get
the
the
outfit.
shoes.
Yeah.
Alex,
Or
I've
you
never
can't get
seen
the
you wear
shoes
trainers,
separately.
though.
I
Did
don't
you-
own trainers.
But did you like the trainers?
I did like the train. I liked more than the physical
idea.
trainers. I liked what the trainers represented.
Yeah, me too.
Which was that it was when they ran down the stairs. It's like this
It's like
is it.
water.
Yeah.
But also, I think this is a great look because I think for me the ones that I loved the most were where it was trainers with an evening dress, trainers with the
Runaway Bride.
bias cut dresses.
Yeah.
Well, just this, it just felt new and modern,
Yeah.
and it, and unexpected as well, which I think is really great. And I think what you were saying, Tim, is interesting as well because at Chanel it's the idea of there being this idea, and whatever the idea is, when it's realised, it's perfectly realised. It's the power to perfectly realise a concept.
Bring
from
me an
beginning to
iceberg.
finish. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like what Raf said about the trainers. That he said he imagines his woman going straight from the red carpet, and she has her trainers in her bag, and she just goes off to a nightclub with her trainers in her bag. It's,
Shall I go get my trainers now?
yes.
I know, we've
Your
let the
lovely
side down
trainers.
and we're both wearing
Should we go and get
heels,
them now?
so-
They're there.
So we can skip around.
It's kind of like the red carpet is the office, and
Yeah.
Which maybe it is for the couture client, which is quite fun. Thank you so much, lovely. You can run off now, I won't
Yeah,
make
you can. That's
Absolutely
the whole point. It's like fluid, really
I know,
easy
look
to
at her
move.
go.
That would be my choice.
It's another collection we don't actually have a look for, but it's one that perhaps we should have started with because it was a real sort of showstopper this season, and there was so much hype and excitement around it, which was the Schiaparelli collection. So if we can go to that, Liam, that would be lovely. But Alex, you liked it, and I know
did.
that the house is incredibly important to you, and Le Croix was very important to you. I know you've got a little accessory.
Couture is very important to me.
But you were
generally.
so impressed by what Le Croix had done there, I believe. So tell me a bit
Beautiful.
about what you
It's
thought.
very
I think I interviewed Marco, and I have never interviewed a designer that has been so enthusiastic about what they're doing. Like, as particularly a designer working within a house, he seemed absolutely in love with the idea of Schiaparelli. And I think you get that sense a great deal in the clothes that he did. I think you get that kind of exuberance. And I think that's why, and I hadn't spoken with him when I saw the show, and I think that's why I liked it, because I think there was a real exuberance to these clothes, and he was experimenting with a lot of things. It was his first time at a couture house. A few people commented to me on kind of the references to Gaultier, or the similarities to Gaultier and Lacroix and Galliano, but I mean, I would argue that all three of those have referenced Schiaparelli
Absolutely.
so heavily.
Absolutely.
But what Marco is doing in his turn is referencing Schiaparelli, and the echoes. He actually said to me, the difficult thing is the fact that Schiaparelli's been referenced by so many
much,
people.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
sure.
To find something that feels fresh and new is quite difficult, and also the fact that he's aware of that referencing and admires it because it's by Galliano, Lacroix, Gaultier, Yves Saint Laurent. You know, it's by some of the greatest names that have worked in fashion in the last 50 years have referenced her. So I think it was quite difficult, I think, for a designer to go into that kind of heritage. And so many people have so much invested in the house. So I think it was probably quite difficult for him to really satisfy a lot of people with what he did. But I really loved it. I just felt like there was such excitement, and it was about, rather than it being a collection and his collection and his Schiaparelli, it felt much more like it was a statement of intent. It was him having gone through the archives, having gone and seen Lesage and been through Lesage's Schiaparelli archive, which is, they have a separate Schiaparelli archive for the embroideries they did with Scap. And he was saying there are certain embroidery techniques that they only used with her and they haven't used since.
But what were they? Sorry,
something with, I think, with the whipped metal and things like that. And I think also that's so incredibly Schiaparelli.
The sequined outfit, where every single sequin was applied by hand. You know, the...
Is it the girl with the red hair?
No, down a bit further. Up, yeah. The one with the red hair, the girl with the red hair.
The girl with the big red hair.
Yes,
every single
Sonia
sequin was, yes. Every sequin was, I thought there was a lot of really interesting...
That is couture, every sequin is.
But it just, there was like 15 million of them.
Yeah.
You know? A nunnery, a whole nunnery must have gone blind with that outfit. I thought that looking at when we were going through the fabrics and in the atelier, and that was the other thing I thought, how exciting must it be to have been obsessed with somebody your entire life, and then you're in the space that they inhabited.
Yeah.
You know, it would be like if the Spiders from Mars reformed and they said, we're not going to do it with David Bowie, we're going to do it with you. And the thrill of that for him, just the psychic kind of surge, the incredible things they were doing with those fabrics. It was just crazy.
Which again kind of is one of the really important things about couture, I think, which you said as well. It's this idea that we see the show and that's great and it's spectacular. Going and seeing the clothes is an entirely different thing, which you sometimes get with ready to wear, but sometimes you don't. Sometimes what you see is what you get. It's a flat, you know, maybe great, maybe dull. Sometimes that's just what you get. And with couture, I don't think it ever is. I've never been to see a couture piece and it not impressed me with kind of the structure and how amazing it is. The different techniques. I don't know what this sound is.
What is that?
Someone agreeing with me
Agreeing
violently,
with you.
hopefully. But I think you go and it's this different world, and also I think sometimes even if you don't like the show, you go and see the amount of technique and the amount of work and the love that goes into something. You can't not be impressed by that, even if you don't really like the show.
And it's a beautiful studio as well, lovely and light. Yeah. But you know what I liked about this, and they call me crazy, but to me it was kind of like the dream of haute couture. It was like the couture,
everything.
Like if you kind of, in a way, what Raf was saying about how couture had been kind of exiled to a pedestal. And he said, why did that happen? Because of ready-to-wear, couture had to be kind of ring-fenced in a way.
With the red carpet.
And then it becomes like this thing that has nothing to do with life anymore. This collection to me was kind of the haute couture that you could dream about maybe in the 20s or 30s or whatever. That it felt to me like when Lucy and Ethel went to Paris. Remember? You wouldn't remember that episode. But it was like, this is couture, this is French couture. Yeah. That's what that collection felt like.
Well, there was something to...
Like funny face.
Well, even more, maybe even, especially
crazier.
there was the outfit with the sequins on the little top thing, I think that Christelle was wearing.
I think Camilla Morton said that it's like a trousseau. That there's it was a collection with everything
that thing that's so
in it, and that was really interesting.
Like very Duchess of Windsor.
Yeah, this is your life. This is a life, a wardrobe.
And I kind of, at the time, I think to see so many different women in it was quite, because it's such a different type of woman in every outfit, but actually that's quite lovely, this idea that you can be a completely different woman at each part of your day.
Well, that's what it is.
And such incredible women too.
Christelle came out and I was like, okay,
Kirsten
sold,
Owen.
Amazing. I'm back in 1998. I'm perfectly happy. Yeah. And Stella as well, you see her maybe more than you see the others, but I also do think there are quite a few references to what he did at Rochas, which,
like
the bell sleeves, there was the great brocade suit with the big sleeves, exactly, those ball skirts. And one, I think he said, there's a chiffon one that was, I can't pronounce the word, but it means kind of billowing in French. And it's this technique of catch stitching from the inside to make it look like it's bubbling, when it had 80 metres of chiffon.
Which took like beyond weeks and weeks and weeks to do.
But that was that was his other thing, was everything that he wanted it to be real couture. All the prints, he drew the prints, and then they were silk screen printed because he wanted it to, he's like, I don't want it to be digital, I want it to be all properly done, all done by hand. Try and, you know, which I love that he's really reveling in the fact that he gets to
I think that's
couture.
really important, that couture is couture, because sometimes it's not quite.
But you know, he did this great comment, I thought, where, you know, the cliche about couture is that you could wear it inside out. And he did all this reversible stuff. So, you know, he actually designed it like, this is couture, look.
You wouldn't have seen that though, unless you actually could
They took it off.
They did it all on the catwalk.
Oh,
they flipped it all on the catwalk. And a lot of it was reversible, wasn't it? Tell me
it had like feathers on the inside. I wasn't sure that, for me, that didn't work as well as I wanted it to.
I just thought it was a great,
but it was nice.
It was a nice idea.
I mean, the insides of couture dresses are fabulous, and often that's to do with the discreet luxury of what is hidden, literally. Often there's a beautiful dress that's underneath.
Well, like you were saying, embroidering an entire dress and then wrapping it in tulle, hiding it straight away.
But you know, when you said it was a lovely idea and he was making a statement about the idea, I think that's what this season was about. It was making a statement with the idea.
A lovely idea.
It was. That's why it's a watershed, I guess, because there's so much for other people to come along and pick over. Hopefully, it's a watershed. You know,
I feel it is. I think it's really exciting. I mean, you had your head up at Charles James, didn't you, at the Met?
I did, yes.
How did that feel?
It's great. I was there for quite a while. But
doing what?
Looking.
This was when I was a student.
Up a dress.
This was when I went to New York when I was a student, and I was absolutely insistent that I had to see a Charles James, and they didn't have any, like, they show you a certain selection of clothes as a student, which you can do at the Vionnet as well, and they show you a Dior bar suit, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And so they showed you a certain thing, and I was moaning and saying that I really wanted to see Charles James, and they brought out a Charles James they were restoring, and it was the rose ball gown.
You fainted.
Well, no, I lay underneath it. And just looking at the construction of that, amazing. You know, it had its own rail and its own specially built dressmaker's mannequin that could hang from the rail while they were reconstructing it. Well, I didn't feel the weight of it, but I think that one is like, aren't they like £20 or something? They're really, really heavy, Charles James. But because of the engineering of the way that the bodice is constructed and the pivot point of the waist, and it's like, that it will support that enormous skirt because it's so perfectly engineered to your body.
Have you
So
been to the
fabulous.
Clothworker Centre yet?
No.
You should
And
go.
he used to make entire wardrobes for people.
I went to see the de Menil Foundation, and they're having an exhibition the end of May, and that will be really exciting. Of course, there's the Met as well. And he made her a whole entire wardrobe.
Have you seen any of the Oliver Messel stuff? I think maybe I've talked with you about. He stayed with the Messel family and used to make the daughter ball gowns out of old Victorian ball gowns, but would like use the same colour contrast from. So there's one that's like pale blue and orange.
Wow.
Like the bodice is orange and then it comes across there. And they have, I think, some pictures of the old ball gowns so you can see the way that he reinterpreted those, which I get is actually very modern. It's sort of what Raf's doing at Dior. It's reinterpreting that language of the past, reinterpreting, you know, an old Worth dress.
What is a dress? What is the meaning of wearing a dress? What is the meaning of having a dress made for you today?
Because Balenciaga used to, I mean, this is something that came up a lot too. I noticed this season that the notion that you would make a complete wardrobe, moving away from the idea of the red carpet. I always loved the idea that Balenciaga made Daisy Fellowes gardening clothes.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite.
Can you imagine?
Her tootling around in her garden and you know, Balenciaga gardening clothes. So.
But this idea of moving away from the red carpet, I wanted to talk about it a little bit more, mainly for the purpose of our viewers, the idea of who the new couture clients are, because I think we throw it around a lot sort of in reviews and when we're chatting, but in all of your minds, who are these new couture clients that we talk about, and the territories that they come from, and the ages they are, and the occupations they have?
I mean, I only know from...
Silence.
No, I know from talking to my great friend Donatella Versace. She said, but again, Donatella's client, you can imagine, is a very specific client. And I think that's probably true of a lot of the houses. A certain type of woman buys Valentino couture, a certain type of woman buys Chanel couture, a certain type of woman buys Dior, and a certain type certainly buys Versace. And she said, you know, they're looking at kind of India, Brazil, some in the Far East. They're all very young. She said it's a young generation, and that's why, and really that they're demanding couture from her, and that's why she started to show couture again, because there was such a demand for what she was doing. And I think so, you know, I can definitely imagine, you know, a multi-billionaire 20-year-old Brazilian wearing Atelier Versace. I can't really imagine wearing much else.
But now, what about the collections that are, you know, what about Dior or Chanel, which are offering a much broader, you know, which are consciously giving you options for your many moods? Who would be the client for that? I'm curious when I read that there's a lot more young Americans, even young British women shopping from couture than...
That's mainly me.
You've been responsible for the blip. Because I think, you know, when you read a magazine now and you see ready-to-wear, you see £15,000 for a ready-to-wear dress in a magazine, surely it's not that much of a step. Like when you're buying men's fashion, it's not that much of a step up to go bespoke with one of the legends from Savile Row.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it's the same thing applies here. Yeah. I hope it does. It'd be a nice idea.
I think I was talking about Balmain, but it does apply to couture, which I was like, you know, if you're going to sell a £15,000 dress, you may as well sell a £45,000 dress. It's the same person that's going to buy it. It's not like someone's going to be, 15 grand, that's my absolute maximum I can possibly pay. That doesn't happen, you know? If you've got £15,000, you're the type of person that books out a hotel suite. Books out a hotel suite the day before because you don't want to smell somebody else in it, or, you know, or book it out because you want to be able to get in at 8 o'clock. So you book the hotel suite the day before so you can arrive at 8 in the morning and go straight to the suite. It's that fabulous, wonderful thing of money not being an issue, which is just being able to live your life how you'd like.
With
but just this idea of being able to live such a kind of simple life, I think. Just the idea that everything could be really easy. And why wouldn't you? If I had the money, would I wear couture? Yes, because it would be exactly how I wanted it to be. It would be perfectly fitted to me. It would be the perfect garment. Would I rather buy something that didn't fit quite right and have someone tweak it?
And that everybody else was wearing, that's the other thing.
Which is another big thing, I think.
You know, your thing that you really like, you'd be sure that it's on a front row the day after the show for a start off.
Yeah.
Which is like...
Yeah, but don't you think that there's also the thing that you want it just familiar enough so people know what it is? Do you think?
No. I think it depends on the market.
I think it's about
It depends on the woman.
Yeah, a lot of the time these days, you is about what other people make of you, though.
Unfortunately.
I think it does depend.
What,
on
you think me that I look like
so
that?
So everybody's a walking consensus.
But also it's like I am this type of person, so I have to wear Chanel because that represents what I am. Or even I want to be this type of person, so I wear Chanel because that will make me.
So what does Chanel represent and what does Dior represent?
Well, I don't think that necessarily applies. I could imagine this season that looking at pictures, there'd be women who could shop their many moods from all different collections.
Well, I think Chanel and Dior are actually more ubiquitous, but I keep talking about Versace because I just love Versace. But I said, why do a black jacket at Versace? If you're the woman that buys a black jacket, you're not going to buy a black jacket from Versace. You want it covered in gold. But
it's not just a black jacket. The Versace black jacket has a curve and a hood or a feel to it, But
see, that's it. I think there's those kind of details. Yeah. But you wouldn't why do an absolutely simple black blazer? Because the person that wants that will buy it from Celine. Don't try it, which I think is why Versace's really great now.
Right.
That's right.
Is because Donatella on every level is really gleefully being Versace.
You're right as usual.
I like the gleefully.
I think I love gleeful. It's a very gleeful season.
Oh, Nicole,
Nicole is there. I don't want to keep you waiting.
I'm gleeful.
A lady
Armani.
in couture does not wait.
It's quite a snug fit as well.
Is it?
So
Okay.
she might not need to be on there
for too long. Okay. Noted. So, what was our take? It's a collection we haven't mentioned at all. What was our take on Armani? This is absolutely.
I love this collection. I was sitting there seeing Lula de la Falaise in it, and it had that
Nomad.
Nomad.
Luxury.
Fabulous
nomad.
couture gypsies, you know.
It's the little headscarf.
Yeah. you know, the thing, I will go on to my dying day about how Armani was a revolutionary.
Completely.
And will always have those kudos with me. And I'm really, I'm fascinated when he does things which honor eccentricity and his own,
in his way.
In his way, where he once said he would love to have been Jean Cocteau, for example. And I love that idea, that Armani would love to have been. And Schiaparelli, Cocteau and Schiaparelli were two people he talked about a lot.
I don't think this look really represents the nomad of this collection.
No,
because this is the choice for...
The sort of more peasanty thing.
Yeah, this was the choice for next shoot.
Alex, were you struck by the collection? Do you feel that as well, as Tim says, that there has to be always this kind of innate respect for the huge changes that Mr. Armani sort of pushed through?
I think it's very easy to forget that, because Armani is, maybe it's that pedestal thing. Armani is at a certain level now, and he's seen as doing a very specific thing that, you know, he's really kind of out of those vagaries of fashion. It doesn't change as enormously visibly as it does with other people. It does change and it does evolve. But I think because it's not that kind of flashy razzmatazz that you see other places, it sometimes gets dismissed. I didn't like this collection as much as I liked Last Haute Couture, because I think the Last Haute Couture was really, really exceptional. Was really beautiful and light and sensuous and very sexy. And there was, I think actually in this you can see that sensuality. There's, you know.
I love the bottom, just this way it kind of, it's like a little mermaid, goes to a different colour.
This whole dégradé here and the beading.
But also, exactly, and the weight of the beading pulling it against your body, it's actually kind of sensuous in a very different way to if you were floating about in transparent chiffon. And this is transparent chiffon, but sort of weight.
But the blues, I think he just does the best blues. The blues, that sort of desert sky at night blue that he does is...
Is that your sky spectrum?
My sky spectrum, that I was
like
showing
all the different colours of the sky were in this collection.
In Lou's eyes.
Well, Lou.
God, flattering. I'll let you go, Nicole, because I don't want you to pass out in Armani, and it is a snug fit, but you look absolutely breathtaking, so thank you. Gorgeous. Now, it's a collection that we haven't got any a look for, which is devastating, because it was one of my highlights, but perhaps I shouldn't be too prejudiced, but it was the Valentino collection, which was absolutely breathtaking, as we've all said. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening at that house and about why this was such a striking collection. Tim, you seemed very impressed at the start of this conversation.
I think that Maria Grazia and Pier Paolo are two of my favourite people in fashion, because they're just so pure in a way. To me, they're like goths. They're like goth kids. I know that they went to Depeche Mode in Rome relatively recently, but I'm sure they used to go to Depeche Mode in Rome a lot when they were young. And they have this. There's this quality in their work, a sort of monastic. Well, I would say eroticism again, because a sort of monastic eroticism, which sounds paradoxical. In this collection, to me, was extremes. There were things I absolutely loved, and then there were things that were technically amazing that I didn't love as much. I thought the Lion King motif with the animal faces, one or two of them would have been striking. I thought that there were a few too many, because they had a sort of a graphic kind of, like I said, Lion King-ish, almost cartoonish quality that seemed a bit at odds. Like the dress with the swan, the sort of ballerina dress with the swan, beautiful. The weaving in the animal
up the side of the body,
and the snake, and all those dresses, weaving in the sort of animal quality and bringing in the opera theme that every outfit apparently
they each had a title, like Electra.
The opening one.
And then getting into the animal thing, where it kind of took over a little bit, I thought that was... there was just a tiny bit too much of that. Those monastic dresses, nobody does those dresses like that.
Did you feel that? I felt that this collection was more... I felt more schizophrenic. I really felt there were 2, even 3 collections in here.
I agree.
I really loved the pure line monastic dresses in those alabasters and
which they have done.
And then the incredible needle point, the embroidered, not needle point, but they were sort of like Eastern monastic dresses. They were, but then the Lion King thing and the tutus.
But the technique, I like the tutus.
I love
I didn't like the
Oh, I
tutus.
really like the tutus.
Yeah, I like the tutus.
But
I think I could have done without the tutus.
the work
That was
in
the
those
day wear,
things,
right?
when
Too
you-
many tutus.
Yeah, when you go into the, was it the day wear?
No, I think the monastic.
It was a sort of cocktail.
No, there were trousers.
I mean,
Yeah.
the thing that I thought was actually really great is, yeah, there was a lot of stuff there, but the monastic stuff really, for me, actually just overshadowed everything else.
Yeah,
And it should be the other way around. It should be that the monastic was the
embroidered.
quiet stuff that you forgot because of all the, La Traviata embroidered
Yeah.
ball gowns. But it wasn't. It was the other way around, and it actually, the incredible sort of purity, and I think also that idea of it being contemporary, that relatability, was very interesting. And it also, for me, talking as the only person here that saw Gaultier, it was quite interesting that I saw Gaultier in the middle of the afternoon, and then I saw this, and again it felt like an old kind of couture, and then these echoes of this new couture, because the elaborate stuff, this felt like new, or the monastic stuff felt like
Was
the
a
new.
step.
But
Yeah.
they have that is their, in a way, that is their couture signature. So I'm always, I mean, to me, they are the most technical couturiers in a way. When you're in they are the
and they say
the
how long
handwork
everything
is
took to make.
You can't when you're looking at things and what looks like, well, with Carl, it's not cloth, it's embroidery.
No, there's
you know,
no
it's-
cloth. There's no cloth. Every
You're
cloth
never looking
has-
at a fabric.
Every cloth
And
has
it's
been
the same-
embroidered.
It's the same thing with them. The a little square millimeter in the middle of a football field sized dress is worked in some way. Nothing is not touched by the hand, and that is so obsessive. I mean, I feel their obsession perhaps more than, which I love. That's why I say that.
That's couture, though. That obsession we need.
And it's
That is.
infectious, I guess, in a way, isn't it?
Yeah,
to see
it
that?
is. It's totally contagious.
Love, eroticism, obsession.
Yes.
Couture.
Yeah.
Calvin Klein.
Calvin Klein. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. But I love.
Oops.
Oh, sorry, honey. One thing that we keep.
Smart as a whip.
I know. Ow.
Sarcastic as well.
One thing we keep mentioning is this idea of a flash of modernity within each collection. So we'll define a collection and say how modern and forward-thinking it was, but then whether it's the monastic pieces in this or what those trainers symbolised in Chanel, it feels like there was this kind of duality to every collection. A collection could be modern, but there was also an even more modern thread running
But I
through
think
it.
as well, it's that idea that you can be modern and you can have those flashes of modernity because it's tied to this incredible tradition of couture. It's tied to 150 years under Worth, it's tied to then Marie Antoinette, then Louis XIV. It's tied to all of this. It's tied to the way clothes always used to be. So you can do something that pushes it. You can actually push it. And I'm so glad that people are doing that, as opposed to miring themselves in this tradition. And as much as I love, things like the amazing stuff that John did in the 90s, that was mired in this sense of history. And then he did The Matrix that broke it into modernity. And everyone reacted against it so violently. But I think, which is a different thing anyway, but I think there's so much here where people are trying to be modern, but using these age-old techniques to do something hyper-modern.
Which is really exciting.
Which is really interesting. That idea of, you see a fabric and it's not a fabric. And
What is fabric?
Exactly.
Yes. But do you find that when you see this modernity and when something hits you with this blow of incongruity or whatever, that you're seeing something which seems so radical within the context of couture, that at the same time it actually does make you go back and look at something that's more traditional, make you more appreciative of, it's like a palette cleanser. You go back and then, like the Valentino collection, you go back and you look at a more traditional approach, and then you see that with new eyes. So in a funny way, the newness is bringing the old, is refreshing the oldness, not just literally, but also more traditional couture starts looking kind of wonderful.
That's really
Did you all feel that this
reinforming.
season?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like a renewed love for couture and a renewed passion.
The what?
Interest.
The what?
Did you feel that this
Renewed
season
love.
a kind of renewed love for couture and a renewed appreciation? No, You
No,
always
I
loved it?
don't know if I think that way about clothes particularly.
But I think as well, the interesting thing with the modernity is it felt really modern. It wasn't just these gestures. It wasn't just, there were trainers with dresses at Dior and trainers with dresses obviously at Chanel, but those weren't just a throwaway thing. They were kind of emblematic of the
Emblematic.
ethos of the collection, of kind of, like you said, that was the concept. That was the easy thing for you to grasp onto the concept, but actually it was embedded in every single piece of clothing.
But
Talk
also
me about
with
that ethos, though. What do we mean by that? Because for the sake
it's the idea of, you think of a trainer, you think that you can run in it, you think that your foot can breathe in it, you think that you can, that it's about movement, it's about freedom, it's about modernity, it's, as much as I don't wear trainers, it's what people wear today, it's about reality. And I think that was what you got all the way through the Chanel collection, all the way through the Dior collection, and in a lot of other collections as well. I think those were the two that said it the best to me. And that's why, for me, those are my two. Those are up on a pedestal for me this season. It was so much about those two. When I wrote about it for the paper, I was like, let's do a Chanel picture and a Dior picture, because they've defined everything.
But then I think the other thing that was interesting about them is because they're emblematic, but they're emblematic of a sort of urgency, and beyond that, they're emblematic of a need, because couture has to
survive.
Can't just be ball gowns.
What is it? Change or die.
Yeah.
It has to
move.
It has to move. And so that's the other thrilling thing. When the notion of something like urgency is injected into haute couture, it's quite a new.
The least urgent.
Yes, really.
3 months to embroider something.
When you say 140
No,
hours to make
real
that dress, can you do it in
urgency,
135?
No, I think that's so interesting, this idea of urgency, this idea of kind of something having a thrust to it that perhaps has been missing. Did you feel that?
Yes, I think that there is, not that Carl feels that there's a sense of urgency at Chanel. That's, the racing team are very well trained, but for him the urgency is to make this message that it is alive, that it has a transformative power that he can't express it like that in ready to wear, that couture is vital, important, and he is hungry for more collections at that level.
And also to point out how stunning it is that Raf and Carl representing this new momentum, separated by 4 decades, and there's a sort of psychological thing here. There's a sort of this annihilation of chronology, which I also think is thrilling as somebody who is getting on in years. It's fabulous to see that the speedometer is being reset by somebody who's just pissing all over people who are a quarter his age, and that just to me is beyond.
Well, I think
it's beyond thrilling. It's so that's
he's
they're
so
so
hungry
Protean.
after it,
So
and
Protean in that.
I think hunger's a good thing.
It's quite interesting as well that both of them are very, very tied to the traditions of the house and very much have the identity of Dior and Chanel. And I said it at the start, but I didn't say it very well, which is the idea that these are two houses that traditionally are diametrically opposed in their views of fashion, but somehow they've converged together, which means that it's about
historic,
the time.
exactly, because it was the absolute, one was that, and the other was that, and now suddenly it's gone the other way around. It's amazing.
But just the fact that Dior said, I always said, Chanel hated Dior and said how much she hated him. Dior never said it, but he did the new look. I'm like, that's the biggest fuck you to Chanel you could ever do.
The opposite.
Let's just make it all Victorian
And
again.
Chanel hated Schiaparelli too.
Chanel hated everybody, except Balenciaga.
Nicole is back, and it's a collection that you said you really threw out there that you were the only person that saw it, Alex. So also, I like that you coordinate with Tim. We've got
yes,
it's the butterfly.
I called ahead.
Alex, talk to me about this collection, because as you said, you saw it.
Okay. The idea, I was told, was that she was a butterfly by day and a showgirl by night.
This is a Gaultier collection. I felt it's important to say for our viewers.
And here we have it. I mean, it's a specific thing. I think some of the styling didn't work. Conversely, the things that were the least butterfly-like and the most butterfly-like worked the best. You wanted it to be those two poles, there were the black suits that he opened with, which are what he does incredibly well, and they'd slit the shoulders to give it a winged effect. And she had a butterfly hat on that she didn't need. And then at the end, it sort of pushed it so crazy that you could appreciate how insane it went. And it totally went with the theme. but it was that odd middle ground where it felt like it was a theme not fully realised, and these two very odd themes that kind of worked together but sort of didn't. But you saw some of the technique, and again, it's, you know, with couture you can't look at the technique and not be impressed. There were these amazing dresses of twisted tulle, where the tulle was twisted, then they were woven into a net, and then the tulle was released at the bottom so they would kick out. And he did that quite a lot, and that I thought was absolutely beautiful and amazing, because you weren't just taking a piece of tulle and twisting it. It was obviously specially shaped to be able to do that and give that impression. So technically that was very impressive, and it also looked really beautiful. There was one that was a red net skirt with a white shirt and elbow length gloves, and that felt really, and again it was that wonderful kind of modern way to dress in the evening, which was very much what Gaultier did when he started, when he was doing kind of, you know, black silk jersey dresses at couture, or denim dresses at couture, leather at couture, things that you hadn't really seen at couture before, which was in 1997. But so much of this just didn't work for me. It just felt really mired in a way of thinking about couture that felt very old-fashioned, and very showgirl, very Crazy Horse, very Ziegfeld, like dressed up and dressed up in a way that you couldn't imagine anyone really wanting to dress up.
Nicole looks beautiful though. Look at her. What was your take on it, Amanda?
Well, I didn't see the show, but I went and looked at the clothes on the racks immediately afterwards. So there was sort of, it was quite a sort of showgirl excitement. There was, you know, powder and sweat in the air, and the dust was just settling, and you know, there were lots of exhausted people running around with clipboards. I love the idea of the butterfly, but I didn't really. But a showgirl for me is where I didn't think it needed to be that. I would have maybe preferred moths would have been good.
Yeah. Well, I think with the butterfly, it was also interesting that I was like, that actually links in with this sense of movement and this sense of lightness.
It could have
it's
gone.
A very literal sense,
it could have gone further with the butterfly, because I mean, this is a half butterfly dress. But actually, what's happening with the printed tulle and the silk and everything, actually that could be expressed more and more and more. And
I think you get the sense that it just...
And you don't need a butterfly hat really if you're a butterfly.
Yeah. It just felt a bit too...
It was too literal.
Literal.
Yeah.
Exactly. And, you know, and I think the amount of technique in the clothes again is, you know, you get completely obsessed with it because it is wonderful.
Yeah,
and he has an amazing atelier.
Incredible.
Yeah, incredible, the twisting.
And he really loves this. He loves couture. He loves the kind of amount of experimentation he can do. But sometimes you feel, maybe it's that gleeful thing, you feel like he gets carried away, he gets too gleeful. There's kind of, you know, you think the show is ending and then it starts again, and it's, you know, like over and over and over.
The thought process or the story, the narrative, maybe doesn't have to be too complicated. You have to have a really great idea.
Well, I think when the exhibition opens at the Grand Palais, which is opening when?
April, I think.
Yeah, that will
be exciting.
Yeah,
really exciting.
It's an amazing show. And I think nobody's ever managed to combine iconoclasm and respect like Gaultier has. I mean, he's walked the most amazing knife edge for years and years. It's been brilliant to watch it.
Yeah.
Brilliant to watch. Thank you so much, Nicole.
I mean, I think
Flutter away.
The thing that I sort of touched on there and something I said about it was, again, this idea of old couture and new couture. And this felt like old couture. It felt like a couture show that you could have seen 10 years ago. And it didn't feel, you know, and certainly after the kind of...
Is there not still a slight place for that, do you think? Something...
I think the world's moved on, and couture's moved on, and that's really, really exciting. I want to see this new mood of couture. I think when you have people, when you saw what Dior did and then you saw what Chanel did, and like we said, it's a game changer. And maybe it's a bit disappointing that the game changed early in the week. So by the end of the week, you were actually looking at things with new eyes. So maybe that was the problem. Maybe it was timing, but then it's fashion.
But do you think you were looking at them through new kind of eyes by the end of the week? Or were you looking at them being more judgmental about, oh, this looks old hat?
I think it depends.
And what were you seeing at the end of the week anyway? The end of the 3 days?
Gaultier, Valentino, Margiela. Elie Saab, which was actually interesting.
Yeah,
the lightness in Elie Saab was interesting.
Can we go to Elie Saab?
Do we have Margiela?
Margiela look is coming
We have
next.
a Margiela look.
Yeah.
excellent.
Well, yeah, I think with Elie Saab it was a lot lighter than it has been in the past, and that was quite interesting. I think that sense of lightness that you felt in a lot of different collections. You know, it was there in Schiaparelli in that 80 metres of chiffon. It was there, obviously, in Chanel and Dior. It was even there in Gaultier. I think that dress is actually very light. So there was that sense that kind of infected lots of different collections, and just people, which I think designers are seeing, it is spring-summer, but they're seeing it as kind of lightness representing a kind of modernity, a kind of contemporary feel.
One thing that we talked about a lot, because we did a live panel when we were discussing the Jean Paul Gaultier show, and one thing that we talked about a lot, we had Philip Tracy on it, and he mentioned this idea of it being, you know, a French designer, and it was very important to him. And I'm really interested to get all of your opinions on that, and whether you think that is important, you know, to have a French designer doing couture. Is there anything in that?
I think that's an old argument.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything in that at all. I think one has to think.
That's been going on for as long as there is couture dead debate. So
you don't think there's any merit?
Well, I think there's so many French people in the house. It's not like
what is French anyway?
But I think as
you
well,
retire on full pension.
But at the same
French.
time, there's this very weird idea that couture can't really exist anywhere else. It has to be in Paris because of the amount of technique, you know. But then I guess Valentino do it in Rome.
Because Rome is also a centre point of technique, different.
But then Rome has the Alta Moda. It has its own tradition of couture, I guess, is the reason why it works
because they used to show there, didn't they?
And Capucci, as, you know.
Wonderful Capucci.
When there was time to travel from one place to another.
Who just set up an atelier? Was it Schiaparelli where they hired petit main from all over the place for that atelier?
It must have been.
Was that Schiaparelli? And
where did they get the
must have been me who was talking to Zanini about finding people. Yeah, where they went everywhere. They've hired people in Rome and all sorts of places to put together a.
That's really exciting. That's actually really exciting.
Well, it's interesting because one collection that I liked this season was it was a menswear collection, the Vuitton collection, which was this idea of the crafts of different areas. I think that's really exciting to see that because it was very South America based, and there's something kind of interesting to see that global. Because Paris isn't the only place that has amazing craft. You know, everywhere has its own little exciting techniques, and to see that sort of brought in, it's quite exciting.
No, I think that's really exciting. But I think there should be more of it.
I don't think you see maybe in Japan, but I don't think you see handwork.
Do you not think
anywhere else?
But not in South America?
No, I think the thing
in
is,
Japan,
I always remember what Lucien Lelong said when the Nazis tried to move couture to Berlin, which is Paris, couture exists in Paris or it does not exist at all. And I'm very into that. I think there's such a weight of, well, not weight, that's the wrong word. There's such kind of a depth of tradition and of handcraft, and it's not just 160 years, it's going back through the fact that French fashion was institutionalized ages ago. It was institutionalized actually by Louis XIV, who decreed that only women could make clothes for other women, except corsets and riding habits could be made by men, which is why it was so revolutionary when Charles James came as a man to do couture. So I think there's this in France, this wonderful idea of, you
Charles James, what about Worth?
Sorry, I meant Charles Worth.
Yeah, I was good at...
Charles James on the brain. But I think there's this kind of great idea in France of, you know, you have to dress, you have to eat, you may as well do it well, like the art of living. And I think that's what couture is really tied to. It's this idea of refinement and also decorative refinement.
But can't we have decorative refinement evolving everywhere else now?
Well, there is decorative refinement everywhere, but you don't have hundreds and hundreds of years. You have the decoration, but you don't have the refinement. And
well, what is refinement? I mean, I went
to that's an incy wincy like you.
I went to see the El Dorado exhibition at the British Museum of the refinement of the really early Colombian gold jewellery, and it's extraordinary, you know.
I think also there's this wonderful thing in couture of people, it's that people making clothes for other people, it's people teaching other people how to do this, it's passing it down, which is, of course, you know, the métier d'art, this idea of keeping it alive.
And it is very alive.
I'm so glad
Paris does that more than, I think there's...
Yeah, well, it's gone
more
here.
Exactly, it's gone so many places.
But there was never a Louis XIV here. There was never a...
I think it was fostered, and there's such national pride in it that it's keeping it going.
We had our lace makers though, and we did have
Well, we still have in Birmingham. They're still there.
But I think things are dying out.
And
fabric
makers.
Which is, and really the great thing about couture is that it can keep that alive.
Can we talk
but also
about
that
we had all the
in
Huguenots here
Scotland
doing
and
the
everything.
Spitalfield silks and things.
Huguenots. Yeah.
I just think it's died out in so many other places.
Talk to us about the Métier d'Art show, because it's something that I'd like to mention, because obviously it's such an incredible thing that Chanel has done there. And
It's
I think
incredible.
It's something that perhaps not all our viewers would know about.
Well, what Chanel done is an incredibly altruistic, generous for fashion, which
Forward
is
thinking.
Yeah,
Forward
which is to save, to finance, to own all the artisan crafts in Paris. So you have La Mariée, the feather maker, you have the hat maker, you have all the jewellery, the beading. I mean, and there's even a special
There's the
tool
pleat
thing.
people.
Yeah, pleat people.
Pleat people.
And they keep expanding. And what's really great if you go there is you see all the youth who, like really young kids who are joining and training. And that's where it's really alive.
But I love I also love that it kind of, I think you said after the last winter couture that they bought the pleaters, and then there was all that amazing pleating.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, we buy a house and then we
celebrate it.
And then we make them work.
Yeah.
It's like buy a house and then so you have to do all of this. And also it's kind of reinvigorating their craft by, maybe it wasn't going so great, but here's what you can do. And let's make
if
it
they
modern,
couldn't pay
let's
the
make it
rent
new.
and the electricity and the wages, and suddenly you can, and employ new people and improve the workspace. And it's not just for Chanel, it's for every design house to use. That's a fantastic thing.
And it's it's funny because I was during the men's shows, Keen Etro, and the celebration of the craftsmanship at Chanel. Well, Keen Etro was celebrating the craftspeople in Puglia who've always made their clothes. It seems to be a thing now, actually, that designers, Raf did very much as well, acknowledging the ateliers. It was a sort of generosity of spirit. It's not about the ego of the designer, the towering ego. It's now much more about sharing the credit. And but he was saying that they can't, as they get older, there's no new people coming in. So, there's no new people coming into the tailoring businesses.
It's that idea, I think we were talking about this a lot actually.
So it's different in Paris.
But there's such an idea that to succeed you have to be, as you say, that towering designer, isn't there? There's not that same respect for your hands in a lot of places.
But I think as well, it's interesting we talk about couture only being able to survive in Paris. I think now Italy are realising that they have to, that made in Italy doesn't mean what it used to mean.
Yeah.
There's all this idea of reinvigorating made in Italy across women's wear, across men's wear.
And then you wonder if it's not too late.
Exactly. Which I think that, and the great thing with the couture is that it has always been alive, and it's all, and why things have been falling off now, Chanel specifically, is supporting these houses, which then means they can work more for other houses, and actually is, giving it a fresh lease of life rather than just keeping it. It's not, it's a heart transplant. It's not on a heart support machine.
No, and Carl needed, the health of those, if you like, he needs more athletes to run his race better and faster and with more glee and exuberance, and so he needs to have that alive and that life.
Talking about life is something that did feel very energetic and always feels very energetic. Let's talk about Margiela, because Nicole is looking absolutely fearsome.
Way.
Are you going to be all right getting... There we go. God, impressive. Tim, talk to me about Margiela, because you got very excited.
I just love it.
Great.
I thought this collection, again, talking about ideas, collections about ideas. The idea in this collection, literally, it was a collection about collectors, which I thought was, conceptually, it's the kind of thing you can run with for days and get really excited by. And I think Margiela, everything that's in Margiela is what fashion is. The idea of connoisseurship, the idea of fetishism, the idea of transform, like the alchemy of fashion, transforming. I mean, if you look at this, if you look at what this dress is made of, it's pull tabs from soda cans. like screws. It's like
little bits of chain.
It's
or
like you keep a street sweeper's bags for about 3 weeks and then pick through them and make that dress. It's bricolage, isn't it? And the only thing I would say, of course, I found the masks insanely macabre this time. I mean, last time the ones that Kanye wore were so beautiful, and they were alien without being profoundly disturbing. And these ones look like that guy from American Horror Story, the first series. You know, that kind of weird rubber.
Yeah. It's just that weird thing of putting glass and mirrors and eyes.
Silence of the Lamb.
Yeah.
No, Manhunter.
Yeah.
Red Dragon.
Red Dragon. Red Dragon. Yeah.
And it's interesting. It's one thing we said right at the start of the discussion, which is this idea of a kind of how the things we saw at other collections made us see this in a slightly new way. We've mentioned that throughout the discussion, but you mentioned particularly Margiela at the start.
Yeah.
Why was there such a respect for it this season?
Well, I've felt this way about Margiela for a while. What I loved the collection about collectors, that you get this incredible provenance, not for every piece of fabric. You get this brochure which tells you what everything is and where it's from. And they used textile fabrics from collectors. And it said where the collector lived.
Like the salvage, right?
Like Frank Lloyd Wright fabric, or
there's a Raoul Duffy one, wasn't there? Like
a Raoul Duffy one, and Werner Pantner, and then the man who made tapestry, who brought tapestries back into the art mainstream in France in mid-century. Quite a lot of his stuff towards the end. And it's the kind of stuff that enthralls me to learn. So on top of everything else, I find Margiela's an education as well. And it does. If Raf and Carl this season were all about finding new meanings in the familiar, which is always thrilling. It's like when you read a book that tells you a story you've heard a million times, but in a completely new way. I think Margiela does that in this collection, has been doing that in the it's a replica collection, isn't it? Has been doing that in this collection for a while. I would just love to know who the people are who do this. You can't get backstage. It's also profoundly anonymous, as with the masks.
That kind of adds to the magic, doesn't it?
Well, the mystique. It's an enthralling continuation of Margiela's original ethos, but also it looks so good. I thought that the dresses with the wraps of textile, you look at them and you think there's almost nothing to them. It looks like somebody tying a piece of
cloth around
their waist, and then you look again, and it's just always this looking and finding new things. I really look forward to this collection.
Thank you, Nicole. Very successfully navigated. I'm very impressed. She's a trooper, Nicole.
I meant to ask her what she sees out of that.
Bless her. We've only got one more look to come, which is a Vionnet look. But before we talk too much about that, I'd like to talk about these sort of the real and modern girls and boys in couture, which is people who are newer houses. So you've got your Boucherer, you've got Iris Van Herpen, who didn't show couture this time. She's focusing on her ready-to-wear. But also in a kind of slightly newer tack, someone like Yelena Sajenko, who's kind of a new person on the scene. What are our thoughts on some of those young upstarts?
Boucherer is brilliant. I mean, this was the first season where she actually was invited into the Chambre Syndicale.
Exactly.
I just think she's absolutely brilliant.
What are don't know, what are the rules of the Chambre Syndicale that you have to
correct my pronunciation?
To join.
They've changed.
They have.
They've evolved over time.
You have to have so many ateliers or
so many staff.
I think it's 10 staff now. It used to be 20. It used to be. I think
significantly
in the
more now.
80s, 90s, it was that you had to show a minimum of 60 looks twice a year. You had to employ 25 staff split between tailoring and flue.
Yeah.
Fabulous stipulations, like none of the fabric could be part cut before the client had been measured. And you had to give your client 50 opportunities a season to see your collection, which is why they used to show constantly.
The trunk.
But which is why they used to show constantly. But now, because of video, it kind of undermined it. The rules I think I'm quoting are from about 1989.
So that it's easier.
So now it's I think 10 employees split between the two ateliers. You have to be based in Paris. You have to show in Paris during Couture Week. I can't remember what the other ones were. I think it's 10 full-time staff, and a minimum of. I'm not sure if they have maybe a minimum.
Everything obviously
of
has to be
20
made
looks.
by hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I wonder how
Every
much
single
those
thing.
rules
That's
get bent.
asking.
Thank you.
I also wonder how those
Losing
kind of
suits.
rules are enforced. That's the thing that I always wonder. How do people
Is there
enforce
a
them?
They have
Someone looking at that's overlocked.
secret shoppers, yeah.
Get in here.
Like that thing on the
have-
tube, plain clothes ticket inspector.
people
I
coming
don't know,
to the
it's a sort of
atelier.
mystique thing, this
But I
the
kind of
chambre
still
syndical.
wish it had that amazing power it used to have in the 50s, which was, when they could lock people up for copying couture dresses. I thought that was fantastic. But now that's great. But now
In the conciergerie.
I can't remember. I think just in a normal prison, not in a fashion prison. Yeah.
Are you as impressed by Bushra as Tim is?
I am. I think it's nice to see someone, again, talking a lot about this modern couture. She's always had this idea of making things that are,
Yes.
realistic
Yes.
and modern,
Yeah.
and that people can
Yeah.
really wear.
Cater to a woman's wardrobe.
In a way that, in a
And
way
catering
that,
to day wear,
Yeah.
much more than
Yes.
evening wear. Like, she's started to do, but it's like the fact she introduced evening wear.
Yeah.
Really, and it's very simple, but it's much more about day wear and about that kind of reality, about a really great cut pair of trousers.
in a way, all of this is kind of superfluous to what she does. The show is kind of superfluous because
Exactly.
she's a sort of designer that I imagine would have people who only shop from her for absolutely everything.
Yeah.
So in that sense, she's very old school, just as she's absolutely
She's very
new
much-
school.
yeah,
She represents the purest, the principle that I would go. A woman would go to her for everything. I think I don't know what happens to somebody like her ultimately. Whether it's
She
not
turns into Azadine Alaya, maybe.
Yeah,
It's
something
almost
like
that
that,
Alaya thing of
Yeah, it
being a
is,
secret person that people go
Yeah.
to secretly, and then she started to get a global stage.
And she cuts. Her cut
Just
is just
incredible.
incredible. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about Ulana and having that kind of breath coming over from Russia. What's our take on that?
Do you want me to be really brutal and harsh?
Always.
It's made in Russia, it's not couture.
Is it?
Yeah.
So that's breaking the chambre syndicale rule.
I don't think she shows...
She's not in the chambre.
She's
No,
not
she's
in-
not on
Okay,
the
so
schedule.
But then it's really confusing showing
Yeah.
during couture.
Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, it's...
I can see it's
Well,
off the
Margiela's
list.
not. Bouchra's,
Yeah.
Bouchra is
Well,
now.
now.
That's, I think
I think Margiela's a correspondent. They're on the official schedule. That some of them...
because
But
there's
for me, it's
Margiela's made in
true.
Antwerp.
True.
Yeah.
What do you
But I think
of it,
Margiela
Tim?
is this very weird
Of
proposal.
her, my favourite thing actually about the show was this incredible outbreak of screaming from across the catwalk, from one group to another group in Russian, and I thought, ooh.
well, I want that.
No, I don't know. No, before the show there was this sort of, I don't know if it was cheerful, hail fellow and well met stuff, whether it was some sort of separatist
Spat.
movement yelling at, it was a little bit scary.
It does sort of evoke that passion, her stuff. She's got quite a committed following. hasn't
And the
she?
women in the headscarves and things in the audience, she really does have Uliana nights, Uliana files or whatever. I love the fact that she's passionate about her dream. It shows, to me, it's a sort of testament to the power of fashion for people who live in cities that aren't central to the, look at all the famous American designers who came from tiny little towns in the Midwest and dreamed their dreams. I mean, she's kind of in that vein. She dreams her
Yeah, but
fashion
they didn't
dream
have
and
a-
makes it come true.
They didn't have an enormous wodge of money to throw
No,
at it
that's
to
how she
make
makes
it
her dream come true.
which is
We're on to our
Proof
last
that anything
look.
is possible.
Do you want to come in, Nicole? So
anything
we've
has a
got
price tag.
Vionnet by Hussein Chalayan. Firstly, what did we think of having Hussein doing demi couture with Vionnet? We were very excited, Tim, because Catherine at Star.com did a wonderful interview with him about
Yeah.
brilliant.
I'd seen Hussein's pre-fall just before I saw this, his pre-fall collection, and I'd seen Raf's pre-fall as well. The pre-fall thing is an interesting phenomenon. There's probably something not to
That's a
talk
whole
about right
ready-to-wear
here.
collection, by the way.
It's a whole other, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And he really is one of the philosopher kings of fashion. I didn't get it so much in this collection. In his own collection, I think he was. I thought this started very, very well. I thought this show started very well.
Electricity, but that looks like pattern paper.
Yeah, there were lots of things in it.
His idea of using the bookcases and making the bookcases in it.
Yeah.
It's quite why you would want to make a dress out of a bookcase. He has alchemized furniture very successfully in the past. In fact, one of his strongest statements for himself was the transformation of furniture into clothing.
Yeah.
And so there were ideas that were him, but he was adamant that this would be not. What did he say? God, I should get it right. I probably shouldn't say it if I can't get it right. But it wasn't going to be him. It wasn't going to be Vionnet. I think that's what he said. But at the same time, I felt it was him, but I didn't feel it was fully realized.
It wasn't full throttle.
No.
I think for me, his last ready-to-wear was absolutely extraordinary. I think you saw me after it when I was having some sort of a fit that I thought it was...
You were under a dress.
I just thought it was the most fantastic. It was, for me, one of the best collections in Paris and of the season.
Yes, absolutely.
If not the. I really loved it that much. I thought it was just this amazing kind of realisation of everything that again, it was that idea of a concept perfectly realised. It was kind of really satisfying to see it.
There's nobody who can turn abstraction into the physical reality of clothing like he can. There's nobody. And I guess in this one I felt the abstraction.
You didn't want to get inside it, whereas with the last one you did. You wanted to get inside. I think as a woman you wanted to wear it, and as a man you wanted to figure out how it worked.
The bias cutting.
Yes.
Which is almost like he made...
Or like a liar, a liar that's completely transfixed by Vionnet.
This has a seam here, so it's...
But the first dresses were beautiful.
Yeah,
the pale one with the circle.
That was
in the
beautiful.
Like the pale grey and the yellow.
But did he make us excited? Did he add to this excitement that we've talked about this season? This kind of bubbling sense of something new happening.
I like that he was there, and I'm interested to see what he's going to go on and do. I don't think this was quite realised, probably not in the way that he would absolutely want it. But I thought it was kind of a brave effort, and it showed that he had, that he can do this. I think it showed that he's thinking about it and that he's interested. And again, that idea that he's got into Vionnet and has been looking at it. I don't think it's fully realised yet, but it added to the excitement because I'm excited to see what he's going to do.
Yeah, we want to look at more of this rather than parade dresses.
But Vionnet is so distinctive. I mean,
I think that's kind of
it's problematic because he is so distinctive.
Yeah.
And for him to make Vionnet into him, he might as well do him. But he's not going to do Vionnet because you don't want Hussein Chalayan to do...
Because, how...
Vionnet.
Really...
Why not just do Vionnet? Well, so many people have tried to do Vionnet. I mean, it is a bit of a revolving door there. Some very good people have been through.
This issue of kind of not reinventing, but rejuvenating a house is always that strange...
I think it is when it's someone like Vionnet, when it's so known for it, when it is so known for a certain thing, and that certain thing has been so incredibly influential across all different designers. And also I think when what she did was so, in a weird way, was so specific, or what she's known for is.
It was very of this moment about women. Vionnet was very much about woman and the shape of woman and how the dresses actually moved.
But I think in a weird way, fashion has edited what Vionnet did. It's the idea that Vionnet has been reduced to the bias cut. It's been reduced to that Huntington Huna picture of the woman lying on the floor with all the drapery arranged out. People forget that she did the crinoline collection and the Brussels and all these different things.
But then you go and look at the Elia exhibition and then see, Vionnet, all the strands of Vionnet teased out. I don't think that. I think the perception's a little bit broader now than it possibly used to be, especially because... It
seems to me we're not quite sure of this fit then, Hussein, at Vionnet, or am I being... Is that oversimplistic?
I'd always just rather see him, to be honest. I'd rather see what he's doing.
I'm interested to see what he is going to do, because I always find it quite interesting when Hussein does sensuality, because it's very different to a normal.
Because his sensuality is actually sexuality. I think he does sex.
I love that one with the moulded leather breasts and the moulded arses, and that, you know, that kind of. But also there was quite a lot of kind of sensuality in that last one, that idea of wrapping and unwrapping your body in cloth, which is incredibly Vionnet, actually. That last collection would have been a great Vionnet collection. That, because there was so much of fabric manipulation. I mean, maybe that was a dress rehearsal for
well, he swore it wasn't, but I suppose the problem is that when it's Vionnet on the label, it slightly changes. You know, if it was him and you'd say, oh look, he's referencing the wraps of Vionnet. When it's her name on the label, then it slightly changes.
We don't know. Do we know how much, like, complete freedom he...
I have no idea.
Yeah.
It's interesting that Guga came out and took the bow with him, though. I thought that was quite interesting to see.
What does that mean to you?
Yes, what does that say to you, Lou?
Oh no, I didn't like it when the questions turn on me.
And then the backstage situation was kind of odd as well.
What was that?
Well, it was just it felt to me very much like two camps. I don't know, I'd be curious to see, curious to see what he does.
Maybe that's with the takeaways from this season seem to be modernity, I guess curiosity, this excitement to see more, and eroticism has come up a lot. Is that a good way to sum
Well,
up?
it's not. There's always eroticism in fashion, because fashion is the most intensely fetishistic pursuit. It's the most fetishist you can be in public without, you know, being.
Most fun a girl can have without taking a clothes.
Fashion, as Vivienne Westwood said, fashion is about eventually being naked.
Perfect way to sum
Iggy
up.
Pop said that.
Thank you so much. That was absolutely
Thank
wonderful.
you.
I think
Thank
Tim
you.
and I need to go and have a lie down because of all that box fizz now.
What, me? You kidding? It was a 70-30 ratio. I'm just fine.
And a big thank you to Nicole, who did a stellar
Yeah, thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Nicole. The human chameleon.